Hello, welcome back to part 2 of my little drawing tutorial here. So for this video I'll be showing how I do the skin texture. I'm going to continue with the nose here. First, before I get into those details, I'm going to finish working on blocking in my values, how I'd like them here, so that it doesn't muck up the fine details as I get to here. Because it can get messy when you're working with powders and such. So, sorry, I just misplaced all my brushes from when I did the previous video here. Alright, so for these darks, I'm using my pan pastel, and I dip it on I don't know if you can see it here, so I kind of just tap it in, and before I go in full-fledged with my darks, I make sure that it's where I want them to be. And then once I'm sure it's where I want them, then I go in and scrub it in harder. And you'll notice there's lots of extra powder that's building up on the paper. You might want to wear a mask when working with the powders, otherwise you'll end up breathing all of this in, and it's not very good for you. You're also not supposed to blow it away if you're not wearing a mask, but I am very guilty of doing that. So you notice I kind of leave it on, the powder, while I blend it. I don't blow it away every second because I use that powder that's on there to smooth what's there. I'm going to go in and take a bigger brush with longer bristles to just get even lighter shades, but still using that powder, working in circular motions. So then I can tap into what's on the paper already, instead of going back to the actual pan pastel tray. Okay, so those are where I'd like them to be. I blow it away from the piece that's finished. I would never blow the powder into the rendered portion of the drawing, because I prefer to keep all my highlights nice and light. So you can see for the light, like I had mentioned in the first video, actually I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I use, for my light shades, some residual powder from my darker brushes instead of trying to get a lighter value with graphite powder or something. So you can also, to smooth it even further, I just take a little tissue, wrap it around my finger, and I kind of blend it as such. Okay, so that's the value range that I'll be working with going into my details. So I use a combination of my, where did have I put it here? My HB and my 5H or 6H. It's not that big of a difference. Right now my 6H is sharper, so I'll use that because I hate sharpening pencils. So for skin texture, you want to have a smooth base, how I just showed you here, and the key to having realistic skin is not keeping it super smooth, because even on females' faces, with all the makeup and the smoothing, they don't have perfectly smooth, poreless, flawless skin. There are pores, there is texture to it. So to achieve this, I go over and it's tedious, but it eventually starts to look like something. I go with my light, this is my 6H that I'm using, and I do tiny little overlapping circles. this section, this portion, is probably the most time consuming of the whole piece. And it may not look like much from, here I'll try and do it in the lighter area so you can see on the video, it may not look like much is happening, but if you can see up close, it makes a big difference. And once you do this too, the whole area, it is noticeably different and already will look more like skin. So you'll notice if you start to go into the darker areas, it's not going to be as noticeable, so that's when you're going to switch to a darker pencil like the HB. This is what I'm using for as I go into the darkers. You don't want to have it noticeable where your pencil, your different values change. So as you press harder with your 6H going in, you'll overlap it with your HB going softer, and then slowly pressing excuse me, pressing harder, going into the darks. Pardon me. So I'll just finish up this section, but you'd want to do this for the entire area. Like I'm going to end up doing this for all the mid and light tones, and I'll even go in to the darks and do it with my 8B over the pan pastel, because the pan pastel it's black, it's a black pan pastel, and it goes on really dark, but you'll notice when you start like down here, this is the pan pastel, this is the Staedtler 8B, so it goes from a dark gray to a solid black. So even in the darker areas, it's still not solid black, so you can still go over with the 8B and do the circles in there and continue your texture, because the texture doesn't stop just as soon as a shadow pops up. There'll still be the most subtle texture going in there, and this way you'll have a nice transition between the highlighted lit up areas where the light's reflecting more and the shadows. It'll give a more believable look and feel to the piece. So I'm not sure if how well you can see just this one little section that I've worked on. But then, after you do all these tiny, teeny little circles, there's going to be, in almost every portrait I've done, sections where the pores are more noticeable. So what I do for this is I go and I take my Tombow Mono Zero eraser. So I'm just going to turn on the light here. I don't know how, that's probably looking pretty poor in the video. Sorry, the sun is just getting tucked away now. So, that went a little too dark. Sorry, I'm trying to get it to focus here. Okay, so Tombow eraser, and I just kind of tap it and pull out little teeny tiny white highlights. Now with these areas, they fade. There's never an area of white where it's just stark white and starts and stops. It always fades out. So to do this, I fade it two ways. I start with a more dense section of white highlights, and then I slowly do less and less as it comes out around the area. And then you can either just tap it lighter so they're not as bright white, or you can go over with a brush and blend over them just slightly so they're not as bright white. I'm not sure how much you can see. So right here, in my photo reference, you can see she has the white is reflected going all the way down the top of her nose there. So that's what I'll be doing. So it'll, that gives you a little bit of an idea how I do that. Now there are more noticeable pores on this portion of the nose that you can see down here and coming up. Now how I did this was I kept doing my my little highlights like this, and then just on the bottom corner, well not corner because it's round, but the bottom, I guess, left side, I do a little crescent shape that follows one of the white highlights. Now I'm going to pick a 6H pencil to do it in the lighter areas, and then a HB in the darker areas. This makes these pores more noticeable. They stand out by adding a little drop shadow against the white. It gives it more dimension. And they're all different sizes. So there's some super fine ones where I'm actually just going to go ahead and stipple some texture in. And then take my lighter pencil again and actually just draw in small circles. They're not perfectly circular. They're a little bit misshapen, they're scattered, they're not evenly spaced apart. Sorry about that. My storage was full and cut off the video. So you might notice it looks a little darker and different from where I just left off. I just continued to do the same technique with the small circles. I noticed my values were a little off, so I brought the darker values a little more this way with these small circles using my HB and my 8B. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when doing this as far as getting the values correct is when you put down that first base layer that we had shaded in here, the smooth layer, you want it to be lighter than what your final result will be, because as you add all these details and as you add these little circular motions to create the skin texture, you're going to be darkening your values slightly. So keep that in mind for any area that you're working when you do work in layers. So I'm just about done with this nose. You can see there's a lot more texture than when we initially started this video. I'll take a photo up close and add it to the end of this video so you can take a closer look and see exactly what's going on. So to recap, just for this, all that was used was the pan pastel, the HB, the 8B, the Tombow eraser, and a couple different brushes. That's all. So these materials and a little bit of time, and you can create quite a range of different textures. Thank you.